Preserving and sharing its heritage is very important to Northampton Saints, especially in the era of the professional game, where the team is no longer recruited locally and heroic stories of the past are no longer shared from one generation of player to the next. In 2019, the Northampton Saints Foundation won a grant with the National Lottery Heritage Fund for a project to research and share the stories of the mob zone and their families. The 270-odd men who signed up in September 1914 with Edgar Mobbs to fight in the First World War. For the past 14 months, our team of very enthusiastic and talented volunteers have been finding out about the men. During the project, it soon became clear we needed to visit where they fought. Earlier this year, working with the National Lottery Heritage team, we created a trip to take the volunteers to the battlefields of France and Belgium, where the mob zone and some of the Northampton Saints players fought.
Edgar Mobbs was the reason that most of this group of men came together. He was a natural leader who captained Saints between 1907 and 1913 and England in 1910, when they won in France. In 1914, he joined the army as a private. An imposing man at over 6 foot tall, he was clearly known across the country, as we have found men joining from as far away as Stroud. And even in the terms of the First World War, he rose exceptionally quickly through the ranks to Lieutenant Colonel. This project hasn't been about Edgar, but we have seen his influence over this company of men from the start of the war till long after it ended.
The team were guided through the stories of the battles by the military historians John Cooksey and McKechnie. The first battlefield visited was Loos, which took place in September 1915. This was a terrible, bloody battle for the inexperienced men of the Northamptonshire Regiment. Many lives were lost. Over 30 of the mob's own were killed and many more injured. The volunteers laid a wreath to pay their respects at the Loos Memorial.
Jack Gillam played with Edgar Mobbs in Saints' back line before the war. His story is particularly sad. Like Mobbs, he was tall and blonde. He was a school teacher who had recently married when he joined up. After the Battle of Loos, his wife tried to find out what had happened to him and received conflicting reports of what had occurred. It was Mobbs who eventually wrote to her to tell her that he was dead. His body was never found, and he's one of the names on the memorial at Loos.
At the end of day one, the group took time to visit the Arras Memorial to pay their respects to another Northampton hero, Walter Tull. Walter played for the Cobblers and Tottenham Hotspur and was the first person of colour to be commissioned in the British Army. Walter was killed near the end of the war in March 1918. On the second day, the volunteers visited several sites where the Battle of the Somme was fought. Newfoundland Park saw fighting on the first day in July 1916. The mob's own joined the fight at Guillemont later that month.
Private Harold Axford was one of the casualties of Mobb's own at Guillemont. Just 19 when he signed up, he married early in 1916 when he was home on leave. He was wounded in July 16, not long after his daughter Madge was born. He was back in action just 6 weeks later, but sadly on this occasion his luck ran out and he was killed in action. He never got to see his daughter.
The group attended the ceremony at the Menin Gate, a daily act of remembrance that has taken place every day since 1928. At the memorial, Edgar Mobbs paid his respects to his great uncle and displayed the Distinguished Service Order Medal awarded to Edgar posthumously. Some of the group laid a wreath to the mob's own after the moving sound of the last post. On day 3, the group visited Danutra Road, where the Saints player Freddie Blackiston won a military cross when he rescued his colleagues whilst his ammunition delivery was under fire. Saints players remember Blackiston when they participate in the Blackiston Challenge during pre-season training. The Battle of Passchendaele was fought in Shrewsbury Forest in the summer of 1917. The group walked through the forest to the Mobbs Cross, where they paid their respects to Edgar Mobbs and all the Mobbs own who died. It was the first time Edgar's great-nephew Edgar had been able to visit the cross. The scale of the losses is brought home to the group by the number of cemeteries and the number of names on the walls in places such as Tynecourt Cemetery. One of the names is Tom Collins. Tom played for the Saints over 100 times. He fought in the Manchester Regiment and died in October 1917 whilst carrying injured away from the front. He left a wife and 6 children.
Despite the huge loss of life in each and every one of these battles, many of the Mobbs own came home from this war. Some had been transferred to other regiments, gained commissions, many won medals for their bravery and their service. Most came home to resume their pre-war jobs, many in the shoe industry, on farms, local offices. They resumed playing their sport with local clubs, and it's stories like those of Sergeant Albert Luck that the project team are unearthing. Born in 1895, Albert was just 19 when he signed up. At the start of the project, it was thought Albert was just an average man, doing his duty and returning home, but he did so much more. Wounded in 1916, he earned 2 military medals for bravery. He made his debut for the Saints as player number 514 in 1919. He played at lock and won a considerable 253 caps. He's now rightly recognised with his name by the number 4 peg in the changing room. The volunteers are doing an amazing job which will continue to unearth more stories that we want to share with the Northampton community into the future.